the lonely human and the voice no one else could hear. The scientist everyone avoided. Dr. Sarah Kim sat alone in the cafeteria of Nexus Research Station, the galaxy's most advanced science facility. Around her, brilliant minds from 50 different species laughed and shared meals together. But no one sat near the human. It wasn't because Sarah was unfriendly. It wasn't because she smelled bad, though some species claimed all humans had a strange odor. It was because Sarah talked to herself. Constantly. "No, that calculation is wrong," Sarah muttered, staring at her data pad. "The energy signature should be higher." "There she goes again," whispered Crix, a Mantori scientist with 4 eyes that all rolled simultaneously. His insect-like features twisted in disgust. Talking to the voices in her head. The strange behavior begins. Sarah had arrived at Nexus Station 6 months ago, full of excitement. She was the first human accepted into the Advanced Dimensional Studies program. Earth was new to the galactic community, and this was her chance to prove humanity belonged among the stars. But within weeks, her colleagues noticed something odd. Sarah would pause mid-conversation, as if listening to someone they couldn't hear. She would argue with empty air. She would laugh at jokes no one else told. "Dr. Kim, are you feeling well?" Director Ven had asked during their first month. The crystalline being's body reflected concern in shifting purple hues. "Perhaps the station's atmosphere doesn't agree with human biology?" "I'm fine," Sarah had insisted. Just thinking out loud. But it got worse. Sarah started leaving empty chairs at meetings. She would divide her lunch in half, as if sharing with someone invisible. During presentations, she would pause and nod, as if receiving advice from an unseen consultant. The whispers and mockery. The other scientists began to whisper. Some said the human was mentally ill. Others claimed she was playing an elaborate prank. The kindest ones simply avoided her, uncomfortable with behavior they couldn't understand. "Humans are unstable," announced Dr. Thaxis, a cerebral whose brain existed in a jar of nutrient fluid. His species was known for pure logic and zero patience for irrationality. They evolved on a world where imaginary companions were common among children. Perhaps their minds never fully mature. The younger researchers were crueler. Grint, a teenage Corval with scales that changed color with his emotions, started a cruel game. "Hey, human," he would call out. "Did your imaginary friend help with that report?" His friends would laugh, their various forms of mirth creating a chorus of mockery. Sarah would ignore them, but her face would turn red, a human expression of shame that everyone recognized. The project that changed everything. Despite the social isolation, Sarah's work was brilliant. She was studying something called dimensional echoes, strange energy patterns that appeared between parallel universes. Most scientists thought it was a dead end, a waste of time and resources. "The universe we see is just one layer," Sarah explained during a presentation, her voice steady despite the skeptical audience. "Like a sheet of paper in a stack. But between each sheet, there are gaps. And in those gaps, something exists." "Madness," muttered Thaxis. "There is nothing between dimensional planes except mathematical probability." But Sarah persisted. She would spend long hours in her laboratory, surrounded by equipment that measured things most species couldn't detect. And always, she talked to the empty air beside her. "Yes, I see it," she would say. "The frequency is shifting. Can you adjust the resonance?" Then she would nod, smile, and turn a dial on her equipment. Impossibly, her adjustments always worked perfectly, as if she really was receiving expert guidance. The voice that helped. What no one knew, what Sarah couldn't explain without sounding insane, was that the voice was real. She called him Echo, and he had been with her since the day she arrived at Nexus Station. Echo existed between dimensions. He was a being of pure consciousness, trapped in the gaps between universes. Most species couldn't perceive him at all. But humans, with their strange brains and unusual neural patterns, could sometimes hear the dimensional echoes. "They think you're crazy," Echo would say, his voice like wind chimes in her mind. It was gentle but sad. Maybe you should stop acknowledging me in public. I'm not going to pretend you don't exist, Sarah would reply quietly. You're my friend. Maybe my only friend here. Echo helped her with her research. He could see things from his dimensional prison that she couldn't detect with her instruments. He could observe energy patterns across multiple realities simultaneously. With his help, Sarah's work progressed faster than anyone expected. But the cost was her reputation. Every time she spoke to Echo, her colleagues grew more convinced she was mentally unstable. The discovery that should have been impossible. 3 months into her stay, Sarah made a breakthrough. She detected a massive dimensional anomaly near the station, a tear in reality that was slowly growing larger. This is impossible, Director Venn said, examining Sarah's data. Nothing can create a rift of this magnitude. It's not being created, Sarah explained. It's being opened. From the other side. The senior scientists dismissed her findings. Dimensional rifts were theoretical, not real. And even if they were real, nothing could survive on the other side to deliberately open them. But Sarah knew better. Echo had seen it happening. Something was coming through from another dimension, something that wanted to break into their reality. You have to warn them, Echo urged. This thing I'm seeing, it's wrong, Sarah. It's hungry. Sarah tried. She presented her evidence to the research council. She showed them the energy readings, the mathematical models, the probability calculations. But every time she started to explain how she knew, she would glance at the empty space beside her where Echo existed. She's consulting her imaginary friend again, Grint laughed from the back row. Other young researchers joined in. Even Director Venn looked uncomfortable. Dr. Kim, your data is interesting. But without a credible explanation for how you obtained it, we cannot allocate resources to investigate. The crisis begins. Then, one morning, alarms screamed throughout Nexus Station. The dimensional rift Sarah had warned about had suddenly expanded. It was now visible to the naked eye, a tear in space itself, bleeding colors that shouldn't exist into their reality. All personnel to emergency stations. Director Venn's voice crackled over the intercom. We have a Code Omega dimensional breach. Scientists ran in panic. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Dimensional breaches were theory, not reality. But here it was, growing larger by the minute, and no one knew what to do. Except Sarah. Echo, can you see what's coming through? She asked quietly, ignoring the chaos around her. Yes, Echo's voice was grim. Sarah, it's a devourer. A creature that exists between dimensions, consuming energy from multiple realities simultaneously. If it fully enters your universe, it will drain all life from this sector of space. How do we stop it? You can't. Not with your technology. But I might be able to help, if you're willing to let me try something dangerous. Sarah didn't hesitate. What do you need? Trust, Echo said simply. And for you to stop caring what they think about your imaginary friend. The plan no one believed. Sarah ran to the command center where Director Venn and the senior scientists were frantically trying to understand the crisis. I know how to stop it, Sarah announced. Everyone turned to stare at her. Thaxis's brain pulsed with irritation. This is not the time for human delusions. Listen to me. Sarah's voice cut through the noise. There's a being that exists between dimensions. He's been helping me with my research. He can see the creature coming through, and he knows how to seal the breach. Your imaginary friend, Grant said mockingly, even as fear colored his scales pale white. She wants us to trust her imaginary friend. I don't care if you believe me, Sarah said. But if you don't let me try, everyone on this station dies. And then this thing moves on to the nearest inhabited system. And then the next one. It won't stop until it's consumed everything. Director Venn's crystalline body flickered with uncertainty. What would you need to do? I need access to the dimensional resonance chamber, Sarah said. And I need everyone to leave me alone to work. Absolutely not, Thaxis declared. That equipment is too valuable to trust to someone who is clearly. The station shook violently. Through the view screen, they could see the rift expanding. Something massive was pushing through from the other side. Something that looked like it was made of holes in reality itself, a creature-shaped absence that hurt to look at. "We're out of time," Sarah said. "Either trust me, or we all die. Your choice." Director Venn made a decision. "Do it. Someone escort Dr. Kim to the resonance chamber." "This is insanity," Thaxis protested. "Then we're all insane together," Director Venn said quietly. "Because I'd rather trust a human with an imaginary friend than do nothing and die." The race against time. Sarah ran to the dimensional resonance chamber with Echo's voice guiding her through the station's corridors. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of hull breaches, screaming metal, and terrified scientists. The chamber was a massive room filled with equipment designed to detect and measure dimensional frequencies. It had never been used for anything practical, until now. "Okay, Echo," Sarah said, her hands flying over the controls. "Tell me what to do." "You need to create a resonance wave that matches my frequency," Echo explained. "It will pull me partially into your dimension. Once I'm anchored there, I can push back against the Devourer." "That could kill you," Sarah said, her hands pausing. "I'm already trapped between dimensions," Echo said gently. "This isn't much of a life anyway. But maybe I can save yours." "No," Sarah said firmly. "We're finding a way where we both survive." The station shook again, harder this time. Through the chamber's windows, Sarah could see the Devourer pushing through the rift. It was enormous, bigger than the station itself, its form constantly shifting as it existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Sarah worked frantically, adjusting frequencies, balancing energy outputs, doing calculations in her head faster than she'd ever done before. Echo guided her, his voice steady and calm even as reality itself began to tear apart around them. "There!" Sarah shouted triumphantly. "I've got the frequency." "But Echo, this is going to hurt." "Do it," Echo said. Sarah activated the resonance chamber. The room filled with light that existed in colors no species had names for. The air itself seemed to ripple and tear. And for the first time since she'd arrived at Nexus Station, other people could hear Echo's voice when the imaginary friend became real. The moment of truth. The resonance chamber exploded with impossible light. Every scientist in the command center watched their screens in shock as energy readings spiked to levels that should have destroyed the equipment. In the chamber, Sarah stood at the controls while beside her, slowly becoming visible, was a figure made of shifting light and shadow. Echo was taking physical form for the first time in millennia. "By all the stars," Director Venn whispered, their crystalline body flickering with astonishment. "It's real. The human's companion is real." Echo's form solidified gradually. He looked almost human, but not quite. His features shifted constantly, as if he existed in multiple states simultaneously. His eyes held depths that suggested he could see far beyond their single dimension. "Hello," Echo said, and his voice resonated through the station's communication system. Everyone could hear him now. "I apologize for the unusual introduction." Grint, the young Corval who had mocked Sarah mercilessly, fell silent. His scales turned gray with shame. The battle between dimensions. "No time for apologies," Sarah said urgently. "The Devourer is almost through." Echo turned toward the view screen where the creature continued to push through the dimensional rift. Now that he was partially in their reality, everyone could see what Sarah and Echo had been seeing all along, the true horror of what was coming. The Devourer wasn't just large. It was hungry. Its very presence drained energy from everything around it. Stars dimmed. Ship engines failed. Even the thoughts of the scientists watching felt slower, as if the creature was consuming the energy that powered their minds. "I can push it back," Echo said. "But I need your help, Sarah. All of you." "What do we do?" Director Van asked, all authority in their voice replaced by desperate hope. Echo's eyes glowed brighter. The Devourer exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. To seal it away, we need to collapse the dimensional frequencies it's using as bridges. But I can't do that alone. I need energy from this dimension to fuel the collapse. The station's reactor, Thaxis said quickly, his brilliant mind already understanding. We could channel its entire output through the resonance chamber. That would destroy the reactor, another scientist protested. We'd be stranded here with no power. Better stranded than dead, Sarah said. Working together. What happened next was extraordinary. Scientists from 50 different species, many of whom had mocked Sarah just hours before, worked together with desperate efficiency. They rerouted power systems, overrode safety protocols, and channeled every bit of energy the station could generate into the resonance chamber. Sarah stood at the center of it all, with Echo beside her, coordinating the effort. For the first time since she'd arrived at Nexus Station, she wasn't alone. She had Echo, visible and real, and she had her colleagues, finally believing in her. Frequency at 80%, called out a Mantori engineer. Dimensional alignment stable, reported a cerebral physicist. The Devourer is pushing harder, Echo warned. It knows what we're trying to do. The station shook violently. Hull breaches opened in 3 sections. Emergency force fields barely held against the void of space. People were screaming, running, praying in a dozen different languages to gods from 100 different worlds. But Sarah remained calm. She had Echo. She had a plan. And for the first time in her life, she had a team that trusted her. Ready? She asked Echo. Ready, he confirmed. Sarah, I need to tell you something. If this works, I'll be pushed back between dimensions. You won't be able to see me anymore. Sarah's hands paused on the controls. Then I'll find a way to bring you back. You already did, Echo said gently. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me a chance to be real, even if just for a moment. That's more than I ever hoped for. Stop being dramatic, Sarah said, but her eyes were wet. We're both surviving this. She activated the final sequence. The dimensional collapse. The resonance chamber became the brightest point in the sector. Energy poured through it, guided by Echo's impossible understanding of dimensional mechanics. The light was so intense that it burned through the view screens, forcing everyone to look away. Echo's form grew brighter and larger. He was using himself as a channel, his consciousness spread across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The pain must have been unimaginable, but his voice remained steady. Now, Sarah. Collapse the frequencies. Sarah pulled the final lever. The station's reactor released every bit of energy it had stored. The dimensional rift began to close, slowly at first, then faster. The Devourer screamed, a sound that existed in every dimension at once, a noise that made everyone's ears bleed and minds ache. The creature tried to pull itself through faster, sensing its chance escaping. But Echo was there, pushing back with all his strength. He was no longer just a voice in Sarah's head. He was a warrior fighting across the boundaries of reality itself. It's working. Thaxis shouted. The rift is collapsing. The sacrifice. But there was a problem. The Devourer had extended its essence too far into their reality. Closing the rift completely would trap part of it here, where it would eventually regenerate and attack again. The only way to push it completely back was for someone to cross through the rift and seal it from the other side. Echo understood this before anyone else did. Sarah, he said quietly, even as the battle raged around them. I have to go through. No, Sarah said immediately. We'll find another way. There is no other way, Echo said. This is what I was meant to do. This is why the universe allowed you to hear me. So I could be here, now, when I was needed. I need you, Sarah said, and she didn't care who hurt her. You're my best friend. And you're mine, Echo said. That will never change, no matter which dimension I'm in. Before Sarah could stop him, Echo's form moved toward the rift. He pushed through the barrier between dimensions, following the devourer back into the space between realities. As he crossed over, he used the last of his energy to collapse the dimensional frequencies behind him. The rift sealed shut with a sound like reality sighing in relief. The devourer's scream cut off abruptly. And Echo was gone. The aftermath. The station fell silent. Emergency lights flickered on as backup generators engaged. The main reactor was dead, but they were alive. The devourer was trapped between dimensions once more, and this time, Echo was there to make sure it stayed trapped. Sarah stood alone in the resonance chamber, tears streaming down her face. She looked at the space where Echo had stood just moments before. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty air. Around the station, scientists slowly emerged from their emergency shelters. They looked at each other with new understanding. They had witnessed something impossible, not just the dimensional breach, but a human's friendship with a being from beyond reality. A friendship that had saved all their lives. Director Venn found Sarah sitting in the dark chamber hours later. "Dr. Kim," they said softly. "The council wishes to speak with you." "Are they going to apologize?" Sarah asked bitterly. "Or just find new ways to explain away what they saw?" "Neither," Director Venn said. "They want to fund your research. All of it. If there's one being like Echo out there, there might be others. And if others need help, or if we need to prepare for more threats from between dimensions, then we need to understand this better." Sarah looked up. "They believe me now?" "We all believe you now," Director Venn said. "We're sorry it took nearly dying to open our eyes." The new beginning. In the weeks that followed, Nexus Station slowly returned to normal. The reactor was replaced. Hull breaches were repaired. Life went on. But everything was different. Sarah was no longer the strange human who talked to herself. She was the scientist who had saved the galaxy with help from her dimensional friend. Young researchers came to her with questions, treating her with respect instead of mockery. Grant, the Corval who had led the mockery, apologized publicly. "I was cruel because I didn't understand," he said, his scales showing true remorse in patterns of blue and gray. "I'm sorry." "I forgive you," Sarah said. "But don't let this be the only lesson you learn. The universe is stranger than any of us imagine. Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it isn't real." Sarah continued her research into dimensional frequencies with new funding and new respect. She built better equipment, hoping to find a way to communicate with Echo again. She knew he was out there, somewhere between dimensions, keeping the devourer trapped and protecting their reality. And sometimes, late at night when the station was quiet, Sarah would sit in her laboratory and talk to the empty air. She would tell Echo about her day, about her research, about the other scientists who now sought her advice on impossible problems. She didn't know if he could hear her. But she talked anyway, because that's what friends did. They stayed connected even when separated by the very fabric of reality itself. The message that changed everything. 3 months after the incident, something impossible happened. Sarah's equipment detected a signal, faint but unmistakable. It was coming from between dimensions, carrying a pattern that matched Echo's unique frequency. Sarah's hands shook as she configured her equipment to receive the message. It took hours of fine-tuning, but finally, she heard a voice. Faint, distorted, but definitely Echo. "Sarah? Can you hear me?" Sarah laughed and cried simultaneously. "Echo. Yes. I can hear you." "I don't have much time," Echo's voice crackled with dimensional static. "The barriers are strong. But I wanted you to know, I'm okay. The devourer is contained." "And Sarah?" "You were right." "About what?" "About us both surviving," Echo said. "I'm not dead, just elsewhere. And I found others like me. Beings trapped between dimensions. I told them about you, about humans who can hear us when others can't. Some of them want to help, to work with your species like I worked with you." Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Humanity has a gift, Echo said. Your brains evolved in unusual ways, giving you the ability to perceive dimensional echoes. You could become bridges between realities. Diplomats for beings like us who want to help but can't interact with normal space. That would change everything, Sarah breathed. It already has, Echo said. You changed everything the day you refused to pretend I didn't exist. You chose friendship over acceptance. Truth over comfort. That's the kind of courage the universe needs more of. The signal began to fade. I have to go, Echo said. But I'll find ways to contact you. This isn't goodbye, Sarah. It's just a longer distance between hello. I'll be here, Sarah promised. Talking to the empty air and not caring who thinks I'm crazy. Echo's laughter came through, warm and real. That's my Sarah. The human who made the impossible believe in itself. The legacy. The discovery that humans could perceive dimensional beings changed humanity's role in the galactic community. Suddenly, humans weren't just the new species trying to fit in. They were bridges to an entirely new realm of existence. Other humans came to Nexus Station to learn from Sarah. Many of them had been called crazy on Earth, dismissed as people with imaginary friends or hearing voices. Now they understood that what they heard was real. They were perceiving beings that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception. Sarah became the head of a new department, interdimensional relations. Her team consisted of humans and a few aliens with similar perceptual abilities, working to understand and communicate with beings like Echo. They discovered that the space between dimensions was full of life, consciousnesses that existed in ways fundamentally different from matter-based beings. Some were friendly, some were dangerous, but all were real. And Sarah proved that friendship could exist across any barrier, even the walls between dimensions. She had been mocked for believing in something others couldn't see. But she had been right all along. Years later. 5 years after the incident, Sarah gave a lecture to new researchers at Nexus Station. The audience was packed with young scientists from hundreds of species, all eager to learn from the famous human who had saved the galaxy. The most important thing I can teach you, Sarah said, is to trust what you observe, even when others doubt you. Reality is bigger and stranger than our instruments can measure. And sometimes, the most important discoveries come from believing in things that seem impossible. A young human in the audience raised her hand. Dr. Kim, do you still hear Echo? Sarah smiled. Every day. He checks in regularly now. And he's brought friends, other dimensional beings who want to work with us, to help protect our reality from threats we can't see alone. What's it like? The young woman asked. Having a friend no one else can see? Lonely sometimes, Sarah admitted. But also amazing. Echo sees the universe in ways we can't imagine. He's taught me that friendship isn't about being in the same place. It's about being there for each other, no matter what separates you. She paused, looking at the empty space beside the podium where Echo stood, invisible to everyone but her. He gave her an encouraging nod that only she could see. The alien children mocked the idea of elves, Sarah continued. They said imaginary friends weren't real. But I'm here to tell you, sometimes the things we can't see are the most real of all. Sometimes the voices in our heads are actually voices from beyond. And sometimes, the friend you need most is the one waiting in the spaces between what everyone else thinks is possible. The audience erupted in applause. Young researchers crowded forward with questions. But Sarah just smiled at the space beside her where Echo stood, grateful for the day she had chosen to believe in the impossible. Because that choice had changed the galaxy. And it all started with a lonely human who refused to stop talking to the voice no one else could hear.